Yo and hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the League of Fantasy Legends podcast. I am your host, Chris Benedict. I am joined once again by Biscuit. Biscuit, how are you?
I am doing well. Good to get back to things here. I'm looking forward to the episode.
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. We weren't able to get one out after the group stage, and that's totally my fault. Of course, I was in New York, the travel between, and then the catch up from work that I had to do for missing a couple days made it pretty much impossible. But we'll go through the group stage, the quarterfinal stages that just ended. We'll go through a bunch of news to recap. We've got tons of news, roster changes are happening, and so we'll get right into that stuff. But before we do, once again, follow us on Twitter. It's at LFLpod. Join our Discord channel. We've been having tons of conversations about who's going where, about the world's matchups that are going on. So join it there. You can find the link on the Twitter or on the description of this podcast episode. And then once again, we've partnered with the Ego app for this Fantasy Worlds tournament. Probably too late really to join, but do it anyways because we get a kickback. It really supports us, and there will be more League of Legends tournaments in the future, definitely for MSI. Hopefully something before then. We're going to talk to them about doing some stuff for LCS. So that is all coming up. Join us there. But first, let's get into the news. You want to start us off?
Yeah, so let's go ahead. Like I said, get into the news here with a recap. We'll start off with some LCS news. So there was some things going around. I had kicked it over to the group. If you're not in the Discord, please join us so you can stay up to date on everything that is happening. And there was some news going around that I guess they're trying some things out on like the viewership side of things, wherein they're looking to change the days of the week that they actually play. So if you're not familiar, right now they play primarily on Saturdays and Sundays. If it's not like a super week, which is just, a one-off where they typically play on Fridays in that case in addition. But I guess they're looking to potentially change it from, again, that weekend to, I believe it is Wednesdays and Thursdays. Have you seen this? Have you seen anything additional that you wanted to add and maybe just give your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's the rumor that's going to be Wednesdays and Thursdays. I don't know how to feel about it. The initial rumor that came out is because Riot wanted their studio on the weekends for Valorant, because Valorant is kind of the up-and-coming thing. League obviously has been around for a long time. That caused a lot of worry with people, but then, Travis Gafford put out a long video talking about how it's not because of Valorant. They're trying some different things to see how it'll affect viewership. The average age of LCS watchers is older than it used to be. It's not so much college kids, where, college kids probably better on the weekend. For people like me who are 30, right? Like on the weekends, I got plans, I got kids, but like after work, I don't think I'll be able to watch it. I think it's actually better for me as far as being able to catch all the games. At least I'll have less things going on the weekend, less times where I'm watching it and my wife wants me to mow the lawn or whatever it is. So I kind of like it. Do you like it? What do you think?
So I'm actually in the same boat, obviously like the same age roughly. So I feel like it would probably personally benefit me moving it towards or to like during the week. But I'm not sure how that would still work, right? Because if they're bringing everybody into the studio, they're located on the West Coast. So, what's realistically the earliest they could possibly start? Like 5 p.m. in order to maybe get people, into the building to obviously watch, like the fans and whatnot. But like any later than that, you're looking at, if you do 6 o'clock, that's a 9 o'clock start on the East Coast. And then eventually matches are going probably at least till midnight, I would think, depending on how many matches they're looking to have. So I'm not sure if viewership would just completely fall off as they, the later and later. I don't know about you, but I do feel like I'm older and we both have kids and I'm not really trying to stay up till 11, 12 o'clock at night on a weekday to watch League. So, obviously I want to watch, but there are some limitations, I feel like, with moving the dates to the week, or during the week, I should say, in this case.
Yeah, they have to account for the time shift, and I know that they will, the time difference between the East Coast and the West Coast, and you have to allow it to be in a good viewing time for the East Coast. That's why we see, Monday Night Football at the time it is and that kind of stuff. So I have to imagine they'll start it no later than 5, because you got 5 games to get through, done at 10 p.m., maybe 6, but you can't do any later than that or else you'll end up losing tons of viewers for the bottom or the games at the end of the day. So still so much to be seen, but I think it's potentially a good thing. We'll see. I'm not really sure. Next piece of news here, similar but for the LEC. So Europe changing their entire split format. They're actually going to 3 splits that will only be 3 super weeks. So they'll only play a single round robin. At the end of that, they'll do a GSL style format. I'm not super familiar with that. It's a double elimination format. It's popular in CSGO. So people who watch CSGO, maybe they can give us a little bit more insight on what that looks like. But it's going to be 3 splits, which means there'll be way more best of 5 series, which to me sounds awesome. And yeah, we don't know what that's going to mean for teams going to Worlds or teams going to MSI, but I think it's awesome that they're changing to a format which really gives more chances for these best of 5s and more chances to, I don't know, have more tournaments and more, hype moments as opposed to regular season games. What do you think?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of thoughts on this, even now as we're just going through it live. I'm thinking like even more about it. So I think from like a good standpoint, like you mentioned, right? I feel like there's going to be a lot more of those, oh man moments or wow moments, because you're going to have the games are so much more important, right? Because there's, like you said, it's going to be best of 5s or more best of 5s. You only have so many options or so many chances, I should say, to get into the double elimination format and then obviously prove yourself there. So it's not really, you're just going through the slog of a regular season per se. I feel like the games in that sense will definitely be a little bit more impactful and important to all the teams. But then just looking at it from the other end, you're going to have teams like Rogue and G2. These are going to be teams that you would, presumably think that they're going to get into that double elimination and, continue to work their way to the top if they're not already at the top and have a good chance of potentially winning this tournament. But at the same time, you have teams like Rhetorics that's coming in, or Heretics, excuse me, and BDS. These teams are going to, continue. They're trying to continue to build their franchise, right? And they're newer teams. So at the same time, while you have the more well-established teams doing really well, you have, newer / weaker teams who just aren't going to play nearly as many games, right? Because they're not going to make it, again, presumably into that double elimination tournament. And then therefore, what are they supposed to do when they're just sitting around for a few weeks watching this tournament? I mean, yeah, you can make the case like, well, get better or whatever you want to consider it. But at the same time, I mean, there is a reason that these teams want to play in a full season, right? Is it so they can potentially get better? And then another thing I was thinking is I saw a lot of comments and back and forth about a lot of people who saw this who are fans and primarily watch LCS were like, oh, let's bring that over here. We want to see more of like the Cloud9s and the 100 Thieves and the Evil Geniuses where, again, this could happen again to the same time of these weaker teams where you have teams like Dignitas, RIP, and, I don't know, Golden Guardians that we'll get into a little bit later here in the show. They're going to be stuck just watching from home. It is, I feel like it's a seesaw per se of good and bad. I guess if this is what people want, it's only good for the viewership moving forward, but definitely a lot of things to consider. And it's definitely something new, right? Not anything that I believe they've tried before. So we'll definitely see a lot. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, I feel like, in this experiment. So definitely looking forward to it because, again, it is something new. Just wanted to really see how it goes and make judgment at that time.
Yeah, and one thing they really need to consider is our Dynasty League, which puts together LCS and LEC players. But if you totally change up the formats like this where they're not the same, they forgot to ask us about our Dynasty League.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring in, anything personal into it, but, it definitely not only a knife in the back, but they looked us right in the face and stabbed us twice in the heart. So I guess we'll try to figure out what we have to do in order to, continue that league. But for right now, we got to wait for more information and confirmation from, the viewership departments or whatnot from Riot. So we'll see how things play out.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. We'll figure something out, but I just can't believe they forgot to consult us because, our league's been together for a full couple months, and it's just really rude of them to not even think about that. Come on.
Yeah, it's golfful, one might say.
Come on. I want to move into next, a couple players, some news about players moving, changing teams. The first one is the biggest one. It's Bjergsen, Team Liquid. Can you believe it?
It is quite unbelievable. I think the biggest thing for me, and I've always followed fantasy and just really league for a little bit. I would say a couple of years now, but technically the offseason doesn't start till I believe it's either like November 22nd or 24th. So the fact that we have all this information coming out a month to almost 2 months prior now that we've seen players saying like, hey, looking for team is kind of interesting to me. I'm not sure if that's really typical, but I mean, it's almost like, what's the point of having contracts? But again, that's just like a side note. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But the big thing, like you said here, Bjergsen is on the move, right? It's official. It came out from Liquid and himself that he is looking for a new team. We'll get into some more of the Liquid changes here and just, recover them because it's been a while if we haven't already mentioned it. But yeah, Bjergsen leaving, I feel like we're on the same page in that it was probably either Bjergsen or Core JJ that was going to be getting the boot or looking for a new team just based on, all the information we got prior to, how they finished in this past split, not even making it to Worlds when this was considered, I should say largely considered, a super team, right? At least from the LCS standpoint. So really interesting that they wanted to go this route and, say Bjerg, like, hey, it's been real. I don't know if he's going to move into like a coaching role with them or if he's just really going to look for a new team. I believe the focus currently is a brand new team. But, what are your thoughts on this? And then as a follow-up, do you think they made the right move in keeping Core JJ over Bjerg in this case?
If the choice was Bjergsen versus Core JJ, I don't know. Core JJ was not that impressive this year, to be honest. But also, it just wasn't the right meta when we were in the, Yuumi Lulu meta. That is not Core. Core's a roamer. He wants to be the guy who engages, pulls the trigger, gets on the map, and that's just not what you do on Yuumi. And so maybe they're banking on a meta change and, Core's international experience and success to really lead them. But man, Bjergsen's the best player in the history of North American League of Legends. I mean, he was just voted that at the finals this year. So I can't believe they're letting Bjergsen go after only one season. I think he's going to end up on another team, maybe 100 Thieves. I think they need to be looking for a new mid laner. But I'm not sure. I'm surprised they're going with it, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I should have mentioned as well, the reason I bring up the Bjergsen versus Core JJ argument, obviously they play two different roles and are very good in their roles, right, pertaining to the team. But again, the reason I bring it up is because Liquid in this case does have 3 players from the Academy's team who I think are the best players at their respective positions. Liquid, arguably the best team in Academy. But the interesting thing here is they're all free agents, right? So they're trying to choose and decide who they want to bring back, but they have a support in the Academy. His name is Ayla. I believe he is not only the best support in Academy, but the best player in all of Academy. So I was kind of hoping that he would get a chance with this team over Core JJ just to see what he can do on the LCS stage. And then again, we'll get into like Hans Sama leaving and whatnot, but another one of those players that is coming from the Academy who is, again, a free agent is Yeon, who obviously played with Ayla while they were in the Academy, and they just did awesome, wiping the floor with everybody in the Academy. So I was kind of thinking maybe they bring him on. We don't know if that's going to be the case yet. And then the last player they have is, I believe the gentleman's name is Harry, who is a mid laner. So that is another question, right? Are they going to bring him back and promote him into the LCS? So they definitely have a lot more questions to answer for sure before the next split, which obviously they have time to do. But I just wanted to clarify why I bring up that, that conversation of Bjerg versus Core JJ, because they do have quite a few options at this point in terms of making up that roster moving forward into the next split.
Yeah, not only that, but there was the report that came out that said Bjergsen and Core JJ didn't really love playing together. So, the speculation was they were going to have to pick one. Sounds like it was Core JJ. Staying on the same team, Hans Sama also leaving, going back to Europe. Sounds like probably best for him. He did not have the best split. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's another big move. I believe he's going to K Corp or Carmine Corp in this case. So he's not even going to go. Obviously he's going back overseas, but he's not even going to LEC. He's going to a totally different league. I think they're in the French league, but I could be wrong. I'm not too familiar. But yeah, just after one split, he was hyped to be one of the best players in the league. If you played fantasy or just, kept a close eye, he did well in that regard. But again, it just wasn't really wasn't fitting the role that they were looking for him to fill. And, unfortunately it didn't work out. So he's on his way to another team at this point. Yep,
definitely. So, good to have him in NA, but too bad. See you later. Next, I want to talk about TSM. So Tactical and Chime. What do you make of those guys?
Yeah, so if you haven't heard, looks like Tactical will be moving on, which I thought was interesting because he seemed to be like almost a savior type in the playoffs. I know they had Instinct, who I personally think is better than Tactical, at least starting for the playoffs. But then they brought in Tactical, right, and they started winning a couple games. Obviously, they didn't go too far, but it seemed like they were a better lineup with Tactical in. But again, statistically speaking, I believe that Instinct was better. So, I mean, I'm not sure what they're going to do here as far as, refilling the role. I don't know if they are looking at an import or what exactly they're looking for, but it will be interesting to see what they do, again, for that position. And then to follow up here, I think this news broke last week sometime. It looks like they are bringing Chime back. He had a decent showing, I think, like in the playoffs and even towards the end of last season, when he was obviously brought up over from Golden Guardians as a support. And I think he did okay. It's just really going to depend on what kind of cohesiveness he can get with whoever the new ADC is for the team, whether that's Instinct or they go some other route. But it will be interesting to see, what they do in that case. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Tactical, I mean, he's been so successful in the LCS in the past, and so I'm sure he's going to pick up somewhere. I mean, he's a good player. He did prove that in the playoffs when he came back. Just that TSM team just wasn't it. Their imports did not work out. Kaiduo and Shenyi just did not work out. TSM's such a power franchise that I'm sure they'll be back. I think the league's better when TSM is good. So we'll see what happens. I think Tactical will land on his feet, though. Find another team.
Yeah, maybe they, take a look at some of those academy kids that we mentioned from Liquid. I know there hasn't been any talks about Yeon going anywhere, as far as I know. So we'll see. Maybe that could be a replacement that they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. And whatever it is, I just hope that TSM is good. I want to talk about some LEC players. I mean, not really the focus of our podcast, but, maybe they end up in NA. I'm really hoping Jankos. I can't believe he's leaving G2. He's been there for so long. He's been such a centerpiece. But he is gone from G2, boot camping and streaming in Korea, trying to find a new team. I just hope to God that's in NA because I love Jankos. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, that would be massive if he would come over, obviously to the LCS. Maybe TSM's taking a look at him as well as a replacement for Spica. Would be really interesting if that were to be the case. I don't know. Do you feel like that would be a good fit? I mean, big personality with a big team, big brand. Perhaps that would work out.
I mean, maybe. I kind of like that. He did say on his stream it'd be better to go to an NA team, like a top NA team, than a bottom European team. I wonder how much he'd be willing to be part of a rebuild as opposed to just hopping on to one of the top teams.
Right.
But who knows? I mean, he's so good and he's so fun that I can only hope he ends up in NA somewhere. And then the other one I'll talk about is Vetheo, or I think it's Vetheo is how they say it. He was on Misfits. He was the Rookie of the Year in the Spring Split. He might have been an MVP candidate. He was amazing in the mid lane in Europe. Heard a rumor that he's maybe looking to come to NA. I think that'd be awesome. I think he would slot right in among the top mid laners. I just feel like mid's kind of a weak role in North America, especially looking at internationally. I think Jensen got smashed. I think Abadage got smashed. And I think Jojo Pion was the only one who held his own. So I'd be interested to see where he'd rank in there. But what do you think about Vetheo?
Yeah, I think with Vetheo potentially looking to come over, I do agree that he would easily be one of the top, mids. Take that for what you will, right? I mean, like you said, Jensen, Abadaga, and Jojo really not having the best of shows at Worlds, but I think Vetheo slides right into that conversation. If you take a look at the stats, he did outperform guys like Perks and Nuke Duck, at least last split. So he's definitely not a nobody, right? Like, he is established. I feel like even now, you mentioned that he was a rookie of the split this past year in spring, and I think he can only go upwards from here. But if he does come over to LCS, hopefully once he realizes perhaps the level of play is not as high as LEC, and that's obviously arguable, but I just hope he continues to grow in his role and really be successful, because like I said, he is very young. It is unfortunate that his team obviously no longer exists, or at least stole their spot. So he's currently a free agent, so we'll see what exactly happens in that situation. But I think it'd be cool to have him come over in LCS to see how dominant he can be.
Yeah, we'll definitely be rooting for that. I want all the talent to come to North America as possible so that we can not have another Worlds run like this year. Please, dear Lord, don't hurt my soul like that again. Couple other pieces of news. So Papa Smithy, he is the GM over at 100 Thieves for the League of Legends team. He's gone. Peter Dunn, the head coach at EG, he's also done. Both of those kind of shocking to me. Leaders of organizations that were really successful this year. What do you make of those?
So I think these are two massive moves that won't get enough attention as not only now, I don't feel like they're getting enough attention. And as we get into the offseason, I mean, like you said it yourself, right? They're the GMs. Like they put these pieces together. I'm not sure how much influence they have, but I'm assuming it's quite a bit. And I would think that, really putting the team together, they would have had the most input in doing so. So if you take a look at two of the, what we want to say here, arguably the top three, definitely top four best teams in LCS, they no longer have their guidance per se. What exactly is going to happen in this case? I mean, I feel like EG is probably going to be okay without Peter Dunn just because their guys are, definitely younger with JoJo and Danny if he does decide to come back. They already have, I feel like, the pipeline, and they're going to be okay in the long run. But with 100 Thieves, I think it's a little bit different. I do think that their pipeline is also very strong, probably a little bit stronger than EG's. But for that LCS team, like what exactly is going to happen? Like someday is a free agent. Was he a main piece for Papa Smithy? If so, will he still be a main piece for whoever takes that position next? And they, arguably try to bring him back. We mentioned like Bjergsen potentially looking for another team, or even Vetheo. Would one of them take Abadaga's spot? Would Jankos come over and take Closer's spot? We really have no idea, unless it was maybe somebody who worked really close to Papa Smithy or, worked under Papa Smithy who would get promoted into that role. I'm not really sure what exactly to make of the 100 Thieves team moving forward, the LCS team, I should say. So it's, again, all speculation. I'm just throwing some things out there, but I think it'd be really interesting to see what this 100 Thieves teams look like. This 100 Thieves team looks like as we get into spring 23. What are your thoughts on these departures here?
Yeah, both of them were surprising. Papa Smithy came out and said that it was just a difference in, philosophy moving forward for the league team. A lot of people took that to mean that 100 Thieves doesn't want to spend any money, which would be really unfortunate because they've just been really good over the last 2+ years. They've made 3 finals in a row. So I hope they're continuing to invest in their team, but if that's not the case, that would be too bad. Peter Dunn for EG, that was surprising too, because they were so successful this year. I mean, if not for the last second substitution, you have to think they're a favorite for, winning the summer split. I think they looked the best at Worlds, despite, the 1-5 finish. So that was surprising to me too. I don't know what to make of it. There's always the talk of what does a head coach do for a league team. I don't pretend to know that more than anyone else, but I'm surprised they would make a change after a successful year. You don't see that too much in traditional sports.
Yeah, and if what you said about 100 Thieves in terms of potentially not wanting to pay players, I mean, if the LCS is anything like traditional sports, right? Like eventually the players who show up and put up the stats and put up the wins, like they want to get paid, right? So, I mean, maybe that's another sign that, again, if that is the case, someday might be looking for a higher payday. So maybe that, eventually leads him to looking for another team.
Yeah, and that'd certainly shoot down the Bjergsen to 100 Thieves thoughts right. Too. So,
right.
Yeah, no way. Golden Guardians pretty much came out and said they're starting over, which is surprising considering they have the best jungler in the world, River. I mean, what do you make of that?
It's just unbelievable. I don't even know really what to say. How do you get rid of such an amazing world-class talent player like River, who, just took the LCS by storm? It was unbelievable. I don't know. I'm flabbergasted, I guess.
River, the man who's so good that he was the lowest scoring jungler in the league. He went on a 12-game winless streak. He's your favorite player, so I mean, you're the one.
Very, very, very true. But in all seriousness, I really don't know what to make of this Golden Guardian situation. Like you said, they're basically dissolving the rosters, for lack of a better term here. They're going to be looking for brand new players for the academy, brand new players for the LCS. They did go through quite a few different lineups, especially towards the end of last split, which if you really think about it, again, just from a traditional standpoint, you would think maybe they're looking at some of the pieces that may or may not work as they get ready for next split, and then take the offseason to kind of get rid of the players who they didn't think were going to work in those positions. But I mean, if you think of it that way, it's almost like, all right, to hell with it. We're tired of trying. We're just going to start from scratch. So I don't know. It's really, really strange. I mean, they don't really have any, I don't want to say young players, but they don't really, they had some established players who just didn't work out. Like I think Stixay had a good showing in playoffs, and I was actually kind of excited to see like what he might do going into the next split. I mean, outside of that, I feel like Licorice has had his time. You know, Blaze Olive, I think was just bad. I don't see, and I don't blame them for not bringing him back. And you know, for all I know, River's going to end up back on Dig, and we'll be right back in the same spot that we were in. But it would be funny if they were to bring him back and they just stuck him on the academy team. I mean, I don't see that happening, but I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. It just seems really strange. But I guess if you're really, I think they were arguably the worst team, even worse than Dig and Immortals, especially at the end of last split. So, I mean, I guess this kind of makes sense if you're really, really looking to start over from scratch. But I don't know. It just seems a little bit strange to me. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a bad team, you may as well, I mean, this is kind of the thought process you should probably have is even if you end up bringing some players back, like start totally over, take a clean slate and see who you think is going to, be the best for your team so you can compete for championships. I just hope that Pride Stalker lands on his feet because he's one of my favorite players. He had that incredible Zed game in the spring that was just so fun. I mean, who plays Zed jungle and pro? So I hope he lands on his feet. I think he's good. All right, well, unfortunately, Biscuit had a couple issues, technical issues, so I'm going to continue the rest of this pod going solo. All it's going to be, I want a quick recap on Worlds thus far, especially the group stage for the Ego app, that tournament that I hope you guys all joined. I've been having a ton of fun doing it, put a ton of research in there. I've done a video podcast with the Ego app guys. That's Snake Baby and Coach D-Man. If you missed that one, head over to YouTube. It's at the Ego app on their channel. The good stuff there, probably a little outdated, but stay tuned for, we'll do another recap episode over there as well. I want to talk about both groups and the quarterfinal stage since we weren't able to get that groups recap episode out, but just moving into it, terrible for NA teams. Like, oh my God, as someone who was rooting really hard, who actually made the trek from Michigan to New York City to catch those games, man, what a disappointment. To be fair, I was there for the second week, so the C9 win, the EG win were awesome. The place was so hype, and it was the first game of the day, so the outside dream of a North American team getting out of groups was still alive at that point. Granted, then in the second game, they got absolutely crushed, both of them. But man, C9, EG, 100 Thieves all looked pretty bad. C9 was the big hope. I predicted them to get out of groups. That was a terrible prediction. EG, I think, looked pretty okay. They had a chance in a couple games, but just wasn't meant to be. And then 100 Thieves, they looked close to RNG a couple times, but you can't lose that match to Flying Oyster. And what Gen G did to them, specifically what Ruler and Lehens did to the bottom lane of FBI and Huhi, was not right. I've never seen such a bot cap in my life. Man, it's just ugly. EU team's not much better, to be honest. I mean, Rogue got through. I think they got lucky, to be completely honest with you. Two things. The first thing being that, they had a great meta read to start, and they played really well, and you have to credit them for going 3-0 in the first week. But I think they were 100% saved by the Gigabyte Marines getting that win against Top Esports. And to be honest, in a match that Top should have won, we had the bug with the Karthus ult and the Maw not proccing. I honestly think Top would win if it wasn't for that. But you can't blame that. Gigabyte Marines, awesome game. That was probably the highlight of the trip of the games that I attended. But, if you look at NA versus EU, NA actually, in the direct head-to-head, they won 5-3. So thank you, Mad Lions, for getting swept and making that happen. Looking at the fantasy recap, a couple guys from groups. I'm not going to go too deep into this because it has kind of passed. And we're going off of the scoring from the Ego app fantasy challenge, of which I am currently in 11th place, but we're out, but we'll talk about that later. Kanavi was amazing in the jungle. They put him on Graves, they put him on Viego, they put him on Nidalee. Just champions that are going to eat up resources, and that's really what it was all about in this fantasy format. So Kanavi was great. Zeus was amazing, so Biscuit had an incredible call on that one. I didn't like the pick. I didn't think T1 was going to perform. I'm an idiot, apparently. Chovy was my favorite pick. He was good. He was the second best mid laner. But realistically, the best picks, it was the RNG guys. Again, just like in the play-in stage, Breathe and Gala both ended up as the top scoring players at their position. And then Damwon were really good. 4 of the top 10 overall scorers, as they really, another team that, I expect them to get out of groups, but they really performed well. Honestly, that they tied with JDG. That tiebreaker game could have gone either way. That was the 369 Aatrox carry that, 369 was also good. He had a terrible Kennen game, but other than that, if we could have gotten points for this tiebreaker game, that'd have been really nice. But nonetheless, I came out of the group stage sitting in 11th place. We move into the quarterfinal stage. Beforehand, I put my lineup together. I was looking at the top 10 teams, trying to pick, players and pick teams that the guys ahead of me didn't. So I was really looking at, I thought Gen G, and I still think Gen G and JDG are going to meet in the final. But I didn't pick that because that was the most popular of the guys in front of me. So I ended up picking EDG. I cannot believe they lost, but we'll get there. The first quarterfinal match, JDG versus Rogue. I mean, just not close. JDG was so much better. Rogue had no chance. Quick 3-0. The T1 versus RNG series, I think it could have been a close series, honestly. RNG had the huge lead in game 2, but they just couldn't do anything with it. T1 did a masterful job of just kind of delaying and just getting the game to a favorable state despite the big gold deficit. And then they found the fight and they just win the game. So, kind of a masterclass from T1 and winning a game that was lost that led to the sweep. Gen G versus Damwon was unbelievable. The 5-game series, the absolute jungle gap that Canyon had over Peanut, but then the final fight just wasn't there. I think Damwon, if they played it a little better, could have won that fight. It was Dakdam on the Aphelios. He flashes forward with the ult, trying to pick off Chovy, but Chovy has the stopwatch or the Zanyas, and so it just wasn't meant to be. Fight goes in the way of Gen G. Incredible series. The crazy thing about the scoring format is that it's actually more beneficial to sweep than the 5 games because they take the average. And so those, Gen G didn't do quite as well fantasy-wise as the other side of the bracket. And then moving into the last series, EDG versus DRX, I think this is the best series we've seen since, T1 Rocks Tigers, which I still think is the best of all time. I'm not sure we'll ever top that. But game 2 ending was the craziest thing I've ever seen in professional League of Legends. If you haven't watched it and you don't want to be spoiled, cut it off now because I'm just going to describe it, but you should go watch it first. The inhibitor respawns as Deft's Ezreal is backdooring. The Nexus literally at 100 HP, 1 auto attack away when the inhibitor respawns. Unbelievable. I was at my parents' house helping them move, kind of watching it in the background. And I was just losing my mind. My parents, of course, having no idea what's going on. I could not believe it. Just an unbelievable play. I've never seen anything like it. And then for that series to go 5 games, game 3 was such a throw from EDG. Somehow Scout and Viper get caught by a max range Renata ult stolen by a Sylas. I just don't understand how you let that happen from max range. The thing moves so slow. And then it's like Scout panics and presses his Zanyas, which means he's just dead. And then that totally turns the game. The fight, the Goldie changes, they get Baron, and it's just over. Like, what in the world is EDG doing? Game 4, they win a fight, and then randomly, Viper gets picked in the bot lane. Scout TPs to try to save them. They get double killed. They lose Baron. The game's just over. And then game 5, I just can't believe that Scout choked so hard. Zeko was amazing on the Sylas, 4 solo kills, but I just have to question what Scout is doing. The first solo kill, he flashes forward under tower, but is out of energy and can't cast his Q. The second solo kill, he doesn't have his mythic, but Zeka does, and he opts into this 1v1, which of course he loses because he doesn't have his mythic. The third one, he's just greeting for farm under the tower. It just kills me, especially since I needed EDG to win for my fantasy team, and that is pretty much dead. But quarterfinals, super fun. Probably the 2 best quarterfinals, probably the best back-to-back series we've ever had. And it's going to leave us with a couple absolute bangers in the semifinals. JDG versus T1. It's going to be a masterclass in the top lane. 369 and Zeus have been by far the two best top laners in this tournament, and I cannot wait to see what they bring out for each other. I'm hoping we're getting like a Fiora Jax every single game. If I get an Ornn or a Maokai, I'm going to be pissed. But we'll see what happens there. I think high chance that those two teams will play through the top lane. I'm hoping for JDG. I like them, but I wonder. I think T1's probably favored because I don't think 369 is going to run over Zeus like he has a lot of top laners. And I think the bot lane for T1 is too good for the bottom lane of JDG, which is, of course, Hope and Missing. I just think that Guma Yusi and Keria are too good. We'll see. Rooting for JDG, but I think it's going to be T1. And then the other side, Gen G versus DRX, a Korean showdown. Gen G, who was incredible in the regular season. DRX, who had a losing record in the regular season. I mean, we'll see what happens. Of course, the story of Deft making it this far is awesome. But I just think Gen G is too clean. You know, DRX was really able to throw together some scrappy comps and find ways to fight and pick teams apart, pick EDG apart. I think Gen G's too principled. I think they're going to find gold leads kind of across the map and just exploit that. And I just don't see how DRX wins this one. I actually think Gen G might sweep, maybe 3-1. You know, maybe a crazy support pick from Barrel will do it. Maybe Gen G doesn't know what to do with the Heimerdinger. I'm hoping for a Singed from Lehens. We'll see. My fantasy team could use it, but I'm pretty much dead there anyways. But anyways, I've had a ton of fun watching Worlds. Hope you guys have too. Got a bunch of big things planned. I'm trying to set up a live stream so I can start streaming when we are recording these podcasts, get a video element to it. Really excited for that. Off season is coming. We're going to have all kinds of cool content. We'll be looking at mock drafts, season previews, and we're going to have that all set up for you. We're looking to hopefully bring on some guests that, you know, have a little notoriety. So I'm really looking forward to that. And so stay tuned with us. Join the Discord. That's the best way to communicate with us. We're always talking Fantasy League of Legends stuff. We're always talking about, you know, who's moving teams and the World's matchups and all that fun stuff. So join the Discord if you can. Follow me on Twitter at LFLPod. Thank you, Ferris Biscuit, for joining me at the start. Sorry about the audio problems. We will get those worked out. We'll get you back on for the next episode. It's been so fun to talk with you guys today. Thank you so much once again. This is Pistons Wish signing off. Peace out.